The crisp autumn air seeped through the gaps in the window frame, a chill I couldn't seem to shake off, not even with the extra blanket draped over my lap. Marabel, my daughter, perched on the edge of the worn armchair, her phone clutched in her hand. "Mom," she began, her voice a touch too bright, a touch too rehearsed. "Julian and I are thinking of a last-minute trip to Italy. 2 weeks, maybe a little longer. Could you possibly watch the dogs? 2 weeks. Italy." The casual way those words tumbled out, as if a fortnight in Europe was something everyone just decided on a whim. "Italy," I echoed, trying to keep the surprise from my voice. "That's sudden, isn't it?" She shrugged, a gesture that seemed to dismiss my observation as irrelevant. "Well, yes, but the opportunity came up, and we just couldn't resist. It's always been a dream of ours, you know." "Of course, dear," I replied, my voice betraying a hint of the hurt I already felt bubbling beneath the surface. "Always been a dream, has it?" It was a dream I hadn't been privy to, a dream apparently easily funded while I fretted over the rising grocery bill. "When were you planning on leaving?" I asked, already picturing the disruption to boisterous golden retrievers would bring to my quiet routine. "Friday," she chirped. "This Friday. But that's only 2 days away." The words slipped out before I could stop them, laced with a touch of the exasperation I felt welling up. She simply smiled, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yes, I know. Spontaneous, isn't it?" I forced a smile back, a pale imitation of genuine warmth. "It certainly is." "Well, of course, I'll watch the dogs for you." "Where will you be staying?" I asked, trying to sound interested, trying to bridge the widening chasm that seemed to be opening between us. "Oh, we haven't quite decided," she replied vaguely, waving her hand dismissively. "Probably a villa somewhere in Tuscany, or maybe a charming little hotel on the Amalfi Coast. We're still looking. A villa, the Amalfi Coast." These words painted pictures of luxury, of a lifestyle so far removed from my own modest existence. My husband, Richard, had always promised us travels, adventures, but those promises had faded along with him, leaving me with a small life insurance payout and memories. Or so I thought. Marabel stood, smoothing the wrinkles from her impeccably tailored dress. "Right. Well, I should probably get going," she said, already halfway to the door. "I need to finish packing." Packing for a 2-week trip to Italy, a trip she'd sprung on me with 2 days' notice. "Of course," I murmured, my voice a little hollow. "Have a wonderful time, dear." As the front door clicked shut, the silence of the house seemed to amplify the unsettling feeling in the pit of my stomach. Something wasn't right. Later that evening, as I sorted through a pile of old papers, a forgotten box tucked away in Richard's study caught my eye. Curiosity piqued. I opened it, finding it filled with documents I hadn't seen before. Bank statements, investment portfolios, legal papers pertaining to a trust fund I had no knowledge of. And then, the real shock. Documents proving ownership of a small, successful software company, a company Richard had apparently started years ago, a company I believed had folded long before his passing. My heart pounded in my chest as I scanned the pages, the numbers blurring before my eyes. This wasn't the modest inheritance I had received. This was substantial, life-changing, and according to the documents, The sole beneficiary of this hidden wealth was Marabel. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My own daughter, the child I had raised, had been managing this fortune, this secret life, right under my nose. The casual mention of a villa in Tuscany, the last-minute trip to Italy, the expensive clothes she'd been wearing, it all clicked into place with sickening clarity. She had access to a wealth I couldn't even fathom, while I scrimped and saved, worried about making ends meet. The hurt I had felt earlier morphed into a burning anger, a sense of betrayal that cut deeper than any I had ever experienced. As I sat there, surrounded by the evidence of her deception, a quiet resolve began to form within me. I wouldn't let this stand. I deserved answers. I deserved to know the truth. The chill in the air no longer bothered me. It was replaced by a cold fire, a determination to uncover every secret, every lie. This was just the beginning. I picked up the phone and dialed the number of an old friend, a lawyer I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hello, Sarah," I said, my voice steady. "I think I need your help." The first pieces were in place. Marabel's little trip to Italy was about to become a lot more interesting than she had anticipated. Rain lashed against the windows, mimicking the tempest brewing inside me. Several days had passed since that awful dinner, the echoes of Marabel's words, "You wouldn't understand," still ringing in my ears. I busied myself with the dogs, their unconditional affection a balm on my raw nerves. Buster, the boisterous Labrador, nudged my hand with his wet nose, demanding a scratch behind the ears. Lucy, the timid terrier, sat at my feet, her big brown eyes full of concern. "It's all right, girls," I murmured, stroking their soft fur. "We'll be all right." But even as I reassured them, a knot of anxiety tightened in my chest. The house felt strangely empty. Marabel had barely spoken to me since that night. She'd come and go like a shadow, her movements quick and silent, her face a carefully blank mask. Every attempt I made at conversation was met with a curt reply or a hasty retreat. "Marabel, dear, could you help me with these groceries?" I'd asked earlier that day, only to be met with a mumbled, "Busy, Mom." As she disappeared into her room, I sighed, the weight of our unspoken conflict pressing down on me. It wasn't just the inheritance that troubled me. It was the distance that had grown between us, a chasm widening with every passing hour. I missed her laughter, her easy confidence, the way she used to confide in me about everything. Now, she seemed like a stranger living under my roof. Later that afternoon, I found her in the garden, staring out at the gray, turbulent sea. The wind whipped her hair around her face, and she looked smaller, more fragile than I'd ever seen her. I hesitated, unsure of how to approach her. "Marabel," I said softly. She turned, her eyes red-rimmed. "Mom," she replied, her voice flat. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't respond, just continued to stare out at the sea. About what happened at dinner, I continued. "There's nothing to talk about," she said, turning back to the turbulent waves. "I told you. You wouldn't understand." "That's not fair, Marabel," I replied, my voice rising slightly. "You can't just shut me out like this. I'm your mother, and I'm an adult," she retorted, her voice sharp. "I can make my own decisions." "Of course you can," I said, trying to calm myself. But those decisions affect me too. And frankly, they hurt me. She finally turned to face me, her eyes flashing. Hurt you? She repeated, her voice laced with disbelief. How can you say that? I'm trying to protect you. Protect me from what? I asked, genuinely confused. From the truth, she sighed, running a hand through her hair. It's complicated, Mom, she said, her voice softening slightly. Just trust me. Okay, trust you. I repeated. How can I trust you when you're keeping secrets from me? When you're treating me like I'm some kind of child? A flicker of something guilt, fear, crossed her face. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again, biting her lip. The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. The rain had stopped, leaving a damp, oppressive stillness in the air. The only sound was the distant cry of a seagull. Finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Julian thinks, she began, then hesitated. He thinks it's best of you if you didn't know. Didn't know what? I pressed, my heart pounding. What is Julian hiding from me? She looked away, her face pale. Her just wants to protect the family's assets, she mumbled, her gaze fixed on the ground. Assets, I repeated, the word echoing in my ears. What assets are you talking about? I knew about the modest savings account my husband and I had shared, and the small life insurance policy. But assets implied something more, something significant. A cold dread began to creep up my spine. Marabel remained silent, her body tense. I reached out and gently touched her arm. Marabel, I said softly, please tell me what's going on. What aren't you telling me? She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and desperation. Mom, she whispered, Dad had left more than we thought. My breath caught in my throat. More, I repeated, my mind racing. What do you mean, more? She took a deep breath, then finally met my gaze. He left a trust fund, Mom, she said, her voice trembling, and he owned part of a business, a successful one. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. A trust fund, a business. My husband, who I thought had left us with barely enough to scrape by, had actually left a substantial inheritance, and Marabel, my own daughter, had kept it from me. I stared at her, speechless, the pieces of the puzzle slowly clicking into place. Her evasiveness, her secrecy, her sudden concern for my well-being, it all made a terrifying kind of sense now. She hadn't been protecting me. She'd been protecting herself, protecting her control over something that rightfully belonged to both of us. The anger, which I had been suppressing for days, finally erupted. How could you? I whispered, my voice shaking with rage and hurt. How could you keep this from me? This is my inheritance, too. She flinched as if I'd struck her. Tears welled in her eyes, but I couldn't find it in myself to feel sympathy. Not yet. The betrayal was too fresh, the wound too deep. Too was scared, she stammered, her voice barely audible. I didn't know what to do, scared. I repeated, the word dripping with sarcasm. You were scared. What about me? What about how I feel? I turned away, unable to bear the sight of her anymore. I needed time to think, to process this devastating revelation. As I walked back towards the house, a new resolve began to solidify within me. I wouldn't let her get away with this. I would find out everything. and I would fight for what was rightfully mine. I had been a fool to trust her so blindly, but I wouldn't be a fool again. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, my future, and I wouldn't rest until I had it all back. Rain lashed against the study window, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. I sat at Marabel's desk, the smooth wood cold beneath my hands. How could she do this to me? Just hours ago, she'd insisted I was overwrought, imagining things. She'd claimed the family finances were simply complicated, a burden I needn't worry my pretty little head about. Now, here I was, staring at proof of her deception, a simple red folder, tucked away in her bottom drawer, and locked a world of secrets. I picked up the folder, its cheap cardboard flimsy in my trembling hands. The label, typed in Marabel's precise font, read estate documents. Do not open. Of course, I opened it. The first page was a letter addressed to Marabel from a law firm I'd never heard of. It detailed the existence of a substantial trust fund, established by my late husband, specifically for me. My breath hitched. He'd always been careful with money, but this was a significant sum, enough to secure my future, enough to finally take that trip to Italy I'd always dreamed of. And Marabel had kept it from me. I flipped through the documents, my heart pounding in my chest. There were bank statements, investment records, even proof of ownership of a small business I had no knowledge of. This wasn't just some oversight, some minor misunderstanding. This was a deliberate act of concealment, a betrayal. Marabel, I called out, my voice shaking. Silence. I called again, louder this time, still nothing. Where could she be with Julian? No doubt. They were probably celebrating, toasting their good fortune. My misfortune. The thought sent a fresh wave of anger through me. I sank back into the chair, the weight of the folder heavy in my lap. The rain continued to batter the window, the rhythmic drumming a counterpoint to the chaos in my mind. How could I have been so blind? Marabel had always been such a responsible, loving daughter, or so I thought. Now I saw a different side of her, a calculating, manipulative side I never knew existed. I picked up the phone, my hand shaking so badly I could barely dial. "Hello, Sarah," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Sarah was my oldest friend, my confidant. I needed to talk to someone, to share this burden with someone who would understand. "Oh, hello, darling." Sarah's warm voice filled my ear. "How are you doing?" "Not well," I admitted, my voice cracking. "I need to see you. Can I come over?" "Of course, love. Anytime." "What's wrong?" I can't explain over the phone," I stammered. "It's about Marabel." There was a pause, a subtle shift in Sarah's tone. "Oh dear," she said softly. "Come right over. I'll put the kettle on." I hung up the phone, a flicker of resolve igniting within me. I wouldn't let Marabel get away with this. I deserved answers. I deserved the truth, and I would get them, even if it meant tearing my family apart. I gathered the documents, carefully placing them back in the red folder. I needed to show these to Sarah, to someone who could help me make sense of it all. Maybe she knew a good lawyer. I'd need one. This wasn't something I could handle on my own. This was a fight, and I needed to be prepared. As I left Marabel's study, the rain had stopped, and a sliver of sunlight peeked through the clouds. It felt like a small sign, a glimmer of hope in the darkness that had descended upon my life. I clutched the folder tighter, the smooth cardboard a tangible reminder of the battle ahead. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, about respect, about the very foundation of our family. And I wouldn't rest until justice was served. I wouldn't let Marabel steal my future, not without a fight. This was just the beginning. I had a lot of planning to do, and I had a feeling Marabel, and perhaps even Julian, would be very surprised by what I did next. They clearly underestimated me. They thought I was just a fragile, grieving widow. They were wrong. I was stronger than they knew, and I was just getting started. Rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the storm raging inside me. I picked up the phone again, the cold plastic a stark contrast to the burning in my throat. It went straight to voicemail again. Marabel, it's me. Please call me back. We need to talk. I hung up, the silence in the house pressing in on me, heavy and suffocating. Where was she? Why wouldn't she answer? Just hours ago, she'd been sitting across from me at the kitchen table, her eyes wide with what? Guilt? Defiance? I still couldn't decipher the expression that had twisted her usually open features. The documents lay spread out on the table, stark black ink on crisp white paper, a testament to the deception that had been woven into the fabric of our lives. The trust fund, the business ownership, all in Marabel's name, all hidden from me. I wandered into the living room, the familiar comfort of the room now replaced by a chilling emptiness. I sank onto the sofa, the cushions offering no solace. The photographs on the mantelpiece, usually a source of warmth and happy memories, now seemed to mock me with their cheerful smiles. There was one of Marabel as a child, her gap-toothed grin radiating pure joy, another of her graduation, her arm round my shoulder, her eyes bright with promise, and then a more recent one, Marabel and Julian beaming at the camera, their engagement rings gleaming. Julian, he must know. He had to be involved. Surely Marabel wouldn't have done this alone. I reached for my phone again, scrolling through my contacts until I found Julian's number. My hand trembled as I pressed the call button. It rang and rang, finally going to voicemail. Julian, I began, my voice shaking. It's Marabel's mother. I need to speak with you. It's important. Please call me back. I disconnected, the silence returning, heavier than before. They were avoiding me, both of them. The two people I loved most in the world were shutting me out. Why the afternoon bled into evening, the rain outside showing no signs of abating. I paced the floor, my thoughts a chaotic jumble of confusion, hurt, and anger. How could Marabel do this to me? After everything, after all the sacrifices I'd made for her, how could she keep such a monumental secret from me? The inheritance wasn't just about money. It was about trust, about the foundation of our relationship. It felt as if that foundation had crumbled beneath my feet, leaving me adrift in a sea of uncertainty. I tried Marabel again, the phone ringing hollowly in the quiet house. Still no answer. I left another message, my voice strained. Marabel, please, I'm worried. Just let me know you're okay. I sank back onto the sofa, the exhaustion finally beginning to seep into my bones. The house felt colder now, the shadows deepening in the corners of the room. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to ward off the chill. But it was more than a physical cold. It was a deep, bone-chilling loneliness. The ringing of the doorbell startled me. I hesitated, my heart pounding in my chest. Who could it be at this hour? I peered through the peephole, my breath catching in my throat. It was Julian. He looked pale and anxious, his usually impeccable hair slightly disheveled. I opened the door, a wave of apprehension washing over me. "Mrs." he began, his voice hesitant. "Where's Marabel?" I interrupted, my voice sharp with anxiety. He shifted his weight, avoiding my gaze. "Shesh is not with me." "Then where is she?" I pressed, my voice rising. "Why isn't she answering her phone?" He looked up at me then, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and something else sepity. "Shesh asked me not to tell you." My heart sank. "Tell me what?" "Julian." He took a deep breath, as if steeling himself for something unpleasant. "She's gone to stay with a friend. Sage said she needs some time." "Time," I repeated, the word echoing in the silence. "Time for what?" He looked down at his feet, his silence speaking volumes. Sage said she can't face you right now." The words hit me like a physical blow. My daughter, the person I had loved and cherished, couldn't face me because of the inheritance, because of the secrets, because of the lies. I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me, and I reached out to steady myself against the doorframe. "She'll call you," Julian stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. When she's ready." He turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, alone in the doorway, the rain still falling, the darkness closing in, and in that moment, something shifted inside me. The hurt and confusion remained, but something else was taking root, something cold and hard and resolute. I wouldn't let this break me. I would find out the truth. I would get my daughter back, and I would make sure that justice was served. The storm inside me was far from over. It was just beginning. Rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the storm inside me. The house felt colder than usual, emptier. Earlier that day, Marabel, my own daughter, had looked me in the eye and told me I was being dramatic, that I didn't understand the complexities of managing finances. "Mom, you just wouldn't understand," she'd said dismissively, her voice laced with a condescending tone I'd never heard from her before. "It's better this way." Better for whom? Certainly not for me. Sitting here alone, surrounded by the echoes of a life I thought we shared. I picked up a framed photograph of Marabel and me, taken on her graduation day. We were both beaming, her arm wrapped tightly around my waist. Had that closeness been a lie? Had she been harboring this secret, this resentment, all these years? I wandered into the kitchen, the linoleum cold beneath my bare feet. The remnants of dinner sat on the counter, untouched. I hadn't been able to eat. Every bite felt like betrayal. She treated me like a child. I whispered to the empty room, the words catching in my throat. The thought stung more than any harsh words she could have thrown at me. I was her mother. I deserved respect, transparency, honesty. I deserved more than to be shut out of decisions that impacted both our lives, decisions about the legacy her father, my beloved husband, had left behind. I opened the refrigerator, the hum of dull drone in the quiet house. I stared blankly at the shelves, my mind racing. How could I have been so blind? How could I have missed the subtle shifts, the veiled conversations, the carefully constructed facade of normalcy? What else don't I know? I murmured, grabbing a glass of water, the coolness a small comfort against the burning in my throat. I sank into a chair at the kitchen table, the wood hard against my back, the silence of the house pressed in on me. Usually, the quiet was a balm, a welcome respite after a busy day. But tonight, it felt heavy, suffocating. I felt adrift, lost in a sea of uncertainty and hurt. I thought about calling a friend, but who could understand this kind of betrayal? Who could comprehend the deep ache of being shut out by your own child? I need to think, I said aloud, the sound of my own voice a small anchor in the swirling chaos of my thoughts. I stood up, pacing the length of the kitchen, my steps uneven. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet, a familiar sound in the unfamiliar landscape of my emotions. I stopped at the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. The streetlights blurred through the downpour, casting an eerie glow on the empty street. I raised her better than this, I muttered, my voice tight with unshed tears. The image of Marabel's dismissive wave, the condescending tone of her voice, replayed in my mind. I thought back to when Marabel was a little girl, how she would follow me around the house, her tiny hand gripping my skirt. She'd been so full of love, so eager to please. "Mommy, can I help?" she would ask, her voice filled with innocent enthusiasm. What had happened to that little girl? Where had that closeness gone? What went wrong? I whispered, the question hanging unanswered in the heavy air. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to ward off the chill that seemed to have settled deep in my bones. The rain continued to fall, a relentless rhythm against the windows. I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp, followed by a wave of exhaustion. I needed to do something, anything, to break free from this suffocating feeling of helplessness. I walked to the living room, the faint scent of potpourri a ghostly reminder of happier times. I picked up the phone, my hand trembling slightly. I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering over the keypad. Who could I call at this hour? Who would understand the tangled mess of emotions that threatened to consume me? I thought of my sister, Sarah. We hadn't spoken much lately, our lives diverging in the wake of my husband's death. But maybe, just maybe, she would be the one person who could offer a listening ear, a voice of reason in the deafening silence of my own thoughts. "Hello." Sarah's voice was sleepy, tinged with confusion. "Sarah, it's me," I said, my voice trembling slightly. I need to talk." There was a pause, a moment of silence that stretched out, filled with unspoken understanding. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked, her voice now alert, concerned. "It's Marabel," I said, the words catching in my throat. She's been keeping something from me." "What is it?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with concern. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "It's about the inheritance," I said, the words heavy with unspoken meaning. "She's been managing it all herself, without telling me." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice hushed. "Are you serious?" "Yes," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I found the documents, the trust fund, the business, everything." "Oh, honey," Sarah said softly, I'm so sorry. I closed my eyes, letting Sarah's words wash over me. It felt good to finally share the burden, to have someone acknowledge the pain I was feeling. What are you going to do? Sarah asked, her voice gentle. I opened my eyes, a flicker of resolve igniting within me. I don't know yet, I said, my voice stronger now, but I'm not going to let her get away with this. A spark of something, maybe hope, maybe just defiance, flickered within me. The rain outside had stopped, and a sliver of moon peeked through the clouds. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to remind me that even in the darkest of nights, there is always a glimmer of light, and I would find my way back to it. Rain lashed against the windows of Mr. Linden's office, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. He'd just laid out the facts, stark and undeniable, and each word felt like a fresh wound. Mrs. Caldwell, he'd begun, his voice gentle but firm. Your husband established a substantial trust fund for you, intended to provide for you comfortably after his passing. He paused, his gaze meeting mine. It seems your daughter, Marabel, has been managing this fund, along with your shared ownership of Caldwell Industries, without your knowledge or consent. I could only stare at him, the blood draining from my face. Managing it, I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. But she never mentioned anything about a trust fund, or the business. Mr. Linden sighed, adjusting his glasses. I understand this must be a shock. The documents clearly outline your husband's wishes. You are the sole beneficiary of the trust and hold a significant percentage of shares in Caldwell Industries. He gestured towards a thick file on his desk. I have copies of everything here. My mind reeled. The casual conversations with Marabel about finances, her vague reassurances that everything was taken care of, they now took on a sinister new meaning. Shesh told me we were struggling, I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper, that the business was barely afloat. Mr. Linden's expression tightened. I see. Well, the financial statements paint a very different picture. He opened the file and began to walk me through the details, highlighting the steady growth of the trust, the healthy profits of Caldwell Industries. With each figure he quoted, a new layer of betrayal peeled away. Had Marabel really been deceiving me all this time? My own daughter. I don't understand, I murmured, shaking my head. Why would she do this? Mr. Linden leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. That, Mrs. Caldwell, is a question only your daughter can answer. But from a legal standpoint, her actions are highly irregular, possibly even illegal. He paused, his gaze steady. You have several options available to you. We can begin by sending a formal letter to Marabel, requesting full transparency and an immediate accounting of the trust and business finances. The idea of confronting Marabel filled me with a mixture of dread and anger. But the thought of her continuing to control my life, my finances, was unbearable. Yes, I said, my voice gaining strength. Do that. Send the letter. Mr. Linden nodded. Of course. And if that doesn't yield the desired results, we can explore further legal action. He picked up a pen and began making notes. We'll need to gather some additional information from you. Do you have any documentation relating to your husband's estate? Any communication with Marabel regarding finances? I shook my head. No, I trusted her completely. She handled everything. The words felt hollow, a testament to my naivete. Understandable, Mr. Linden said gently. But we'll work together to uncover the truth. I assure you, Mrs. Caldwell, I will do everything in my power to protect your interests. The meeting stretched on, delving into the complexities of the trust, the intricacies of corporate law. My head spun with unfamiliar terms and legal jargon, but through it all, a quiet resolve began to solidify within me. I would not be a victim. I would fight for what was rightfully mine. As I left Mr. Linden's office, the rain had stopped and a sliver of sun peeked through the clouds. It felt like a small sign of hope. I hailed a cab and gave the driver my address, my mind already racing ahead. I needed to prepare for the confrontation with Marabel. I needed to understand her motivations, to unravel the web of deceit she had spun. Back in my apartment, the silence felt heavy, suffocating. Every familiar object, every photograph on the wall, seemed to mock me, reminders of a life built on a foundation of lies. I wandered through the rooms, touching surfaces, trying to ground myself. In the living room, my gaze fell upon a framed photo of my late husband. His kind eyes seemed to look straight through me. A wave of grief washed over me, followed by a surge of anger. He had entrusted Marabel to protect me, not to deceive me. I picked up the phone and dialed Julian's number. He answered on the second ring. "Hello, Mrs. Caldwell," he said warmly. "Is everything all right?" "Julian," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I need to see you. It's about Marabel." There was a pause, then a quiet, "Of course. When can you come over?" "Tomorrow morning," I asked. "Would that work?" "Yes, of course. Come any time." "Thank you, Julian," I said, a sense of foreboding settling in my stomach. This conversation with Julian would be just the beginning. I had a long road ahead of me, a battle to fight. But I was ready. I had nothing left to lose. The truth, however painful, would come out, and I would finally reclaim what was mine. The crisp, professional scent of Mr. Linden's office, a mix of old books and polished wood, did little to calm the tremor in my hands. He'd just laid out my options, each one a sharp, cold instrument dissecting the fragile remains of my relationship with Marabel. "So, Mrs. Caldwell, you have a strong case," he'd said, his voice measured and calm. "Your husband's will clearly intended for you to be the sole beneficiary. Marabel's actions, while perhaps motivated by misguided protectiveness, are nonetheless illegal. Misguided protectiveness. That's what he called it. My own daughter, locking me out of my own life. What are the next steps?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Mr. Linden steepled his fingers, the movement precise and deliberate. "We begin by sending Marabel a formal letter. It outlines your legal claims and requests a full accounting of the trust, as well as the business assets. It offers her a chance to rectify the situation amicably." He paused, his gaze steady. "Frankly, Mrs. Caldwell, most cases like this are resolved at this stage. The threat of legal action is usually enough." I nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of his words. "And if she doesn't comply?" I asked, the knot in my stomach tightening. "Then," Mr. Linden replied, his voice hardening slightly, We proceed with legal proceedings. We file a lawsuit, seeking a court order to compel her cooperation. It can be a messy process, but we have a solid case. He leaned forward slightly. Mrs. Caldwell, I understand this is a difficult situation, especially given the family dynamics, but I assure you, I'll do everything in my power to protect your interests. I sat there for a long moment, the silence broken only by the quiet hum of the air conditioning. My mind raced, replaying every interaction with Marabel over the past few years, searching for clues I might have missed. Had there been hints of this deception, a flicker of guilt in her eyes, or had I been so blinded by my grief, by my trust in her, that I'd allowed this to happen? I need some time to think, I finally said, my voice thick with emotion. Mr. Linden nodded understandingly. Of course. Take all the time you need. But the sooner we act, the better. Delaying things will only complicate matters. He handed me a business card. Call me when you're ready. Day or night. I left his office feeling a strange mix of resolve and despair. Resolve because I knew I had to fight for what was rightfully mine. Despair because the fight was against my own daughter. The drive home was a blur. I barely registered the traffic, the changing scenery. My mind was consumed by the image of Marabel, her face a mask of pain concern when she told me about the small inheritance, the modest family business. Lies, all lies. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed Julian's car parked in front of the house. He was probably there for dinner, a regular occurrence these days. He and Marabel were practically inseparable. Seeing his car there, a symbol of their shared secret, ignited a fresh wave of anger within me. I took a deep breath, composing myself before stepping out of the car. I wouldn't let them see how much they'd hurt me. Not yet. I walked into the house, forcing a smile onto my face. Marabel. Julian. I'm home, I called out, my voice betraying none of the turmoil within me. Marabel emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Hi, Mom. Julian's just grilling some steaks. Everything okay? She looked at me with a mixture of concern and was that a flicker of apprehension in her eyes. Just a long day, I replied, keeping my voice light and casual. Mr. Linden is quite thorough. I saw Marabel's smile falter, just for a fraction of a second. Julian came in from the patio, a spatula in his hand. Hey, Mrs. Caldwell, good to see you. Steaks are almost ready. He beamed at me, oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. That sounds wonderful, Julian, I said, my smile a carefully constructed mask. I walked past Marabel, heading towards my bedroom. I think I'll just freshen up before dinner. As I closed the door behind me, I leaned against it, letting out a long, shaky breath. The charade was exhausting, but it was necessary. I needed time to plan my next move. I needed to decide how to deliver the news, how to make them understand the magnitude of their betrayal. Later, at the dinner table, the conversation was strained. Marabel kept glancing at me, her eyes filled with a nervous energy. Julian, bless his heart, remained cheerfully oblivious, chattering away about his work. I ate little, pushing the food around on my plate, my mind racing. The image of Mr. Linden's calm, assured face kept flashing through my mind. He'd given me the tools, the knowledge. Now it was up to me to use them. As I excused myself from the table, pleading a headache, I caught Marabel's worried gaze. "Are you sure you're okay, Mom?" she asked. Her voice tinged with concern. "Just a bit tired," I said, managing a weak smile. "I'll be fine." I retreated to my room, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I picked up the phone, my hand hovering over Mr. Linden's number. It was time. Time to reclaim what was mine. Time to let them know that I wouldn't be silenced, that I wouldn't be ignored. The game was about to change. Rain lashed against the windows, mimicking the turmoil inside me. I paced the living room, clutching the phone, my hand trembling. It had been 3 agonizing days since I'd found those documents. 3 days since my world had been turned upside down by my own daughter, Marabel. 3 days of unanswered questions and a growing sense of betrayal. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the phone rang. Caller ID, Marabel. My heart hammered against my ribs. I took a deep breath and answered. "Marabel, Mom, is everything all right? You sound tense." "Tense," I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Marabel, how can you ask me that after what I found? After everything?" A pause, then a hesitant, "Mom, I don't know what you're talking about." I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. "Don't play games with me, Marabel. I found the documents, the trust fund, the business ownership, all of it." Silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the rhythmic drumming of the rain. Finally, Marabel spoke, her voice small and strained. "Mom, I can explain." "Explain? Is that what you call it? Hiding this from me for all these years, making me believe?" My voice cracked. I had to fight back the tears threatening to spill over, making me believe we were struggling, that we had nothing. "Mom, it wasn't like that. Please, let me come over. We can talk about this face to face." "Fine," I said, my voice tight. "Come over. But don't think for a second that a simple explanation will make this right." The rain had eased by the time Marabel arrived, a hesitant figure silhouetted against the porch light. She stepped inside, her eyes darting around the room, avoiding mine. "Mom, sit down, Marabel." I gestured towards the sofa. We sat in silence for a moment, the tension thick between us. "Well," I finally prompted, "I'm waiting for this explanation." Marabel wrung her hands in her lap. "Mom, when Dad died, he left everything to me. The trust fund, the business, everything. He didn't trust you with it." My breath hitched. That was a lie, a cruel, calculated lie. My late husband trusted me implicitly. We built our lives together, shared everything. This was Marabel's doing, not his. "That's not true," I said, my voice shaking. "Your father would never." "He did, Mom. He told me he was worried you'd be taken advantage of, that you weren't practical enough to handle it all." "Taken advantage of," I repeated, incredulous. "By whom? Certainly not my own daughter." "Right?" Marabel flinched, her gaze dropping to the floor. "Mom, I was just trying to protect you, to make sure the money was safe." "Safe? By keeping it all for yourself, by letting me struggle, letting me believe we had nothing." I stood up, my anger bubbling to the surface. "Do you have any idea how humiliating that was for me? Having to scrimp and save, having to worry about every penny, while you were sitting on a fortune." Marabel finally met my gaze, her eyes filled with tears. Mom, I bought you things. The new car, the renovations on the house, it was all from the trust. Charity, I spat. You treated me like a charity case, like I couldn't manage my own life. No, that's not it. I didn't want you to worry. I wanted to take care of you. Take care of me, I laughed. A harsh, hollow sound. By lying to me, by deceiving me for years. That's not taking care of me, Marabel. That's controlling me. Marabel stood up, her face flushed. I didn't mean to hurt you, Mom. I really didn't. But you did, Marabel. You hurt me deeply. I turned away, unable to look at her. I need some time to think. I need to figure out what to do next. Mom, please, I held up a hand, stopping her. Just go, Marabel. Please. She hesitated for a moment, then turned and walked out the door, leaving me alone in the silence of the house. The rain had started again, a soft, steady drizzle against the windows. I sank back onto the sofa, my head in my hands. I needed to think. I needed to plan. And I needed to find a lawyer. Because one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let Marabel get away with this. My husband's legacy, our future, was all mine. And I was going to fight for it. I was going to get it all back. The ringing cut through the silence of my empty apartment. It was Marabel. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the phone. Part of me wanted to let it go to voicemail, to prolong the agonizing silence between us. But a stronger part needed answers, needed to hear her voice, even if it brought more pain. I took a deep breath and answered. Marabel, Mom, she began, her voice trembling. I need to talk to you. I think that's rather obvious, dear, I said, my voice tight. After all this time, you finally decide to call. The silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable. I could practically hear her struggling to form the words. I know I messed up. Marabel finally choked out. I made a huge mistake. I should have told you about the trust, about everything. Should have. I repeated. You stripped me of my own husband's legacy. Marabel, you kept me in the dark. Let me believe I was practically destitute while you controlled everything. Mom, please let me explain, she pleaded. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was trying to protect you. Protect me, I scoffed, by treating me like a child, by taking away my agency, my right to make my own decisions. My voice cracked, and I fought back the tears threatening to spill. You know, your father trusted me. He believed in me. He would never have done this to me. There was another silence, broken only by Marabel's soft sobs. Mom, I know I betrayed your trust. I betrayed Dad's trust. I was so scared. Scared of what, Marabel? I pressed, my voice softening slightly. Scared that I couldn't handle the truth. Scared that I would somehow squander the money. No, Mom, she whispered. I was scared of losing it all. The business was struggling after Dad died, and I was so young. I didn't know what to do. Julian said, Julian. I interrupted, my voice hardening again. What did Julian have to say about this? He helped me, she stammered. He advised me on how to manage the finances, how to keep the business afloat, and how to keep it all a secret from your own mother. I finished for her. Marabel, I don't understand. Why involve him in this deception? Why not come to me? I'm your mother. I would have helped you. I know, Mom, she cried. I thought you were too fragile after Dad's death. I didn't want to burden you with more worries. So you decided to burden yourself with the weight of this lie? I asked, my voice tinged with sadness. Marabel, you've carried this secret for far too long. It's eaten away at you, at our relationship. I know, she repeated, her voice choked with emotion. I want to fix this, Mom. I want to make things right. Then tell me the truth, Marabel, I said firmly. Tell me everything. No more secrets. No more lies. Tell me exactly what happened. How much money is involved? Everything Julian advised you on. I deserve to know. I deserve to know the full extent of this betrayal. A long silence followed, filled only with the sound of Marabel's ragged breathing. Finally, she began to speak, her voice low and hesitant. She confessed to the financial difficulties the business had faced, the decisions she had made, the extent of Julian's involvement, and the true value of the trust fund. She explained how Julian had convinced her to keep the information from me, arguing that I wouldn't understand the complexities of the business and would only make things worse. As I listened, a cold knot formed in my stomach. The amount of money was far more substantial than I had ever imagined. Marabel, I said, my voice shaking. This is unbelievable. You've been living a lie, and you've dragged me into it with you. You've not only kept me from my rightful inheritance, but you've also allowed Julian to manipulate you, to control you. I know, Mom, she whispered. I see that now. I was so naive, so foolish. Naive, I repeated. Foolish, Marabel. This is beyond naivete. This is a betrayal of the deepest kind. A betrayal of our family, of our trust, of everything your father and I built together. I know, Mom, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Forgiveness, I said. My voice hollow, is a long and complicated process, Marabel, and it starts with honesty, complete and utter honesty, and action. I want access to all the financial records, all the documents. I want to speak to my own lawyer, and I want to understand every single transaction that has taken place since your father's passing. Do you understand? Yes, Mom, she whispered. I'll do whatever you ask. I want you to know that I love you. I never meant to hurt you. Love, I said softly, doesn't operate in secrets and lies, Marabel. Love is built on trust, and you've shattered that trust completely. We have a long way to go before we can even begin to repair what you've broken. The line went silent, the unspoken words hanging heavy between us. I hung up the phone, the weight of Marabel's confession pressing down on me. I knew this was just the beginning of a long and difficult journey toward reclaiming what was rightfully mine, toward rebuilding the trust that had been so carelessly broken, and perhaps, just perhaps, toward understanding the daughter who had become a stranger. There was one card I hadn't yet played, and it was about to change everything. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across my living room carpet, the same carpet I'd vacuumed countless times over the years, meticulously maintaining our home while my husband, bless his soul, built his business. He always said, a happy home is a clean home, and I believed him. I believed in him. We built our lives together, brick by painstaking brick, both literally and figuratively. He'd handle the finances, I'd handle the home, a partnership, a shared dream. And now I sat here in the quiet stillness, feeling more adrift than I ever had, even after his passing. The weight of Marabel's deception pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. My own daughter, the one I'd nurtured and protected, had kept such a monumental secret from me, a secret about my own life, my own future. How could she? I whispered to the empty room. The silence echoed back, a hollow reminder of the chasm that had opened between us. I traced the rim of my teacup, the porcelain cool against my fingertips. It was a wedding gift, a delicate piece with hand-painted roses, a symbol of a life I thought I knew, a life built on trust and shared hopes. Now, that trust felt shattered, like the fragile china in my hands. I worked just as hard, I murmured, remembering the long hours I'd put in, not at a paying job, but in maintaining our home, raising our children, being the backbone of our family. While he was building his empire, I was building our haven, and Marabel knew that. She'd grown up witnessing it, experiencing it. She knew, I repeated, the words catching in my throat. I stood up, the sudden movement sending a ripple across the surface of my tea. I needed to move, to do something, anything to break free from the suffocating grip of betrayal. I paced the room, my footsteps muffled by the thick carpet, my mind racing. Each step brought a fresh wave of memories, images of Marabel as a child, a teenager, a young woman, always so responsible, I thought, remembering how she'd meticulously organize her toys, how she'd excel in school, how she'd always seem to have a plan. And now this plan, this elaborate scheme of secrecy, it felt like a slap in the face, a rejection of everything we'd built together as a family. I stopped at the window, gazing out at the familiar street, the houses lining the sidewalk like silent witnesses to my unfolding drama. The normalcy of the scene, the mundane rhythm of everyday life, felt jarringly at odds with the turmoil raging inside me. It's not just about the money, I realized, though the financial security it represented was undoubtedly significant. It was about the principle, the dishonesty, the blatant disregard for everything I'd contributed to their lives, to our shared history. I turned away from the window, a new resolve hardening my features. She needs to understand, I said, my voice stronger now, steadier. She needs to understand what she's done, the damage she's caused. I picked up the phone, my hand trembling slightly as I dialed the number of my lawyer. "Hello, David," I said when he answered. "I need to see you again. Something's come up, something I need to discuss. It's about the trust and the business. I think I'm ready to move forward." Later that evening, Marabel arrived, Julian trailing behind her, his face etched with a mixture of concern and confusion. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine, a flicker of apprehension in their depths. "Mom," she began, her voice hesitant. I know you're upset." "Upset, Marabel," I replied, my voice laced with a quiet intensity that surprised even myself. "Upset hardly begins to describe it. Betrayed, deceived, those words are closer to the mark." Julian shifted uncomfortably, his gaze darting between Marabel and me. "Mrs. Hayes," he started. But I cut him off. This isn't about you, Julian, I said, my voice firm but controlled. This is between Marabel and me. This is about family. Marabel's face paled. She knew what was coming. Mom, please, she pleaded. Let me explain. Explain. I repeated, a hint of disbelief in my tone. Explain how you could keep something like this from me, your own mother, how you could control my inheritance, my future, without so much as a word. Tears welled up in her eyes. I was trying to protect you, she said, her voice trembling. Dad always said you weren't good with money, that you were too generous. Generous, I scoffed. Is that what you call it? I call it being kind, compassionate. Values, Marabel, values that I obviously failed to instill in you. That's not fair, she retorted, her voice rising slightly. I was trying to do what I thought was best. Best for whom? Marabel. I challenged. Best for yourself. I reached for a folder on the coffee table, the one containing the documents David, my lawyer, had prepared. I placed it on the table between us, the stark white of the paper a stark contrast to the rich mahogany of the wood. I've spoken to my lawyer, Marabel. I know my rights. Marabel's eyes widened as she took in the folder, the legal documents within a silent testament to my resolve. Julian's face was ashen. I'm not asking, Marabel, I continued, my voice calm and steady. I'm telling you, I want control of what is rightfully mine. I want access to the trust, to the business, and I want it now. The silence that followed was thick with tension. Marabel's defiance had crumbled, replaced by a dawning realization of the consequences of her actions. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Okay, Mom, she said, her gaze fixed on the folder. Okay, you'll have it. The admission, though reluctant, was a victory, a small but significant step towards reclaiming what was mine. But the hurt, the betrayal, it still lingered, a wound that would take time to heal. As they left, Julian glancing back at me with a mixture of awe and fear, I knew this was just the beginning, the road to rebuilding trust, to forging a new understanding with my daughter, would be long and arduous. But I was ready. I had faced harder battles, overcome greater challenges, and I would not be deterred. I would fight for my future, for my family, for the legacy my husband and I had built together, and I would win.